Hey everyone, it's Miv. I'm here with the Lavender Bergamot Kitchen once again. Today I'm going to be making one of my favorite things to bake, which is scones. So let's just get started. Um, I'm going to make blueberry cranberry scones because things are just warming up here, but we don't have a lot of fruit yet. So um, this is kind of a formulaic recipe, which means that you can increase the volume and make more if you need more scones. So I'm going to start with, it's 2 cups of flour, but with flour you can substitute about a quarter of your total flour with something else. So sometimes I like to use cornmeal, that's really good. Today I'm going to use oats, so I'm going to do 1.5 cups of flour and 1/2 cup of oats. And the oats will kind of soften everything up and add a really nice texture. With cornmeal, it makes the scones a little more crumbly, and it's also a really nice texture, but different. And these are just rolled oats. They're not quick oats. You could maybe use quick oats. I can't really speak to that. And then you want to make sure you have a little extra flour for the end when we're rolling them out. We'll need some flour. So then the other dry ingredients are baking soda, baking powder, salt, a little bit of sugar, depending on what kind of fruit you're using and how sweet it is, and then spices. So I'm going to, for the 2 cups of flour, I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And baking powder reacts with heat to make things rise. So that's really easy. Then I'm going to do a 1/2 teaspoon, kind of a scant 1/2 teaspoon, which means not quite all the way up to the top, of baking soda. Baking soda rises after it reacts with acid. So I will be using buttermilk, and that's gonna, those two will react together. The thing about baking soda is that it starts reacting immediately when it hits the acid. So you don't want to use baking soda where you're making a batter and then cooking it a lot later, because you'll get a flat product. It won't keep rising. Then a scant 1/2 teaspoon again of salt. And then I'm going to use brown sugar today because I just think it adds a little, I don't know, a little extra flavor. I don't like my scones super sweet, so I'll probably do 2 tablespoons, which might be about how much I have here. You know what, I don't want to waste, that's maybe an extra teaspoon. I don't want to waste that or take it home. And then spices. So you can use whatever spices you like. I'm going to use just a little bit of cinnamon because you don't need much. And I'm going to use ginger because I love ginger. So I'm going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Cinnamon does take over if you put enough in. And then I think I'll do a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, but kind of like a heaping 1/4 teaspoon. Okay, that's all the dry stuff. So then I'm going to mix that all together. Oh, something that's important for scones that I'm not doing because I just want to move a little quickly, but all the cold stuff should come right out of the fridge when you're ready to use it. So normally I would have my butter in the fridge, and then I would get to this point and I'd pull it out and I'd cut it. So I cut it in half down the lengthwise, and then I cut it into little slices. So then I'm gonna put it all in there. And then what I do, this is a little bit fussy, but this makes really good scones. So I kind of toss it in, and then piece by piece, I squish the butter in with the dry products. You kind of want to keep tossing it, get it all mixed in. This does take a little while, but you'll just get a much better texture later if you do it this way versus like a pastry cutter or something like that. You do want kind of big pieces of butter. It's like with pie crust, like the butter will, when you heat it up, it kind of melts and then creates these little pockets in the flour structure where the water in the butter will steam, and that also helps it rise. So that wasn't too long. So you can see I have kind of some big pieces of butter and some little. It's all mixed together. You want these bigger pieces. You don't want just, like when they say pea size, that's too small. Okay, and then at this point, I'm gonna add the fruit. So again, since I'm using frozen fruit, I would just take it right out of the freezer at this point. But so this is about, I don't know, what is this? Maybe a cup and a half or 2 cups, but it's not all the way up. So I would say maybe this is a cup and a half of fruit. I have whole cranberries, and then these tiny little wild blueberries, which are kind of my favorite. I feel like as far as frozen fruit, the little wild blueberries have more flavor. What I don't want is all this liquid at the bottom. So that is just a result of me prepping ahead of time. If the fruit was still really frozen, there wouldn't be that liquid. Let me rinse off my hands really fast. Ooh, a good trick when you're using flour is to wash everything with cold water so the flour doesn't bake like on your hands or on your dishes. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly mix the fruit into the dry ingredients. I like a lot of fruit. Oh, I almost forgot to kind of balance out the cranberries. I also like to add a little bit of dried blueberries. So let's add maybe half a cup, and they just kind of mix in with everything else. A little extra never hurts. And I'll just add a little extra sweetness because cranberries are kind of tart. Okay, and then for liquid, I like to use a little bit of heavy cream and then buttermilk. And I don't usually measure the liquid because it really depends on how much liquid there is in your fruit. For example, if I was just doing dried cranberries, if I was just using cranberries, I would add more liquid. If I was using something like raspberries, where as soon as you touch them, the liquid starts to come out, I would use less. So just kind of keep an eye on it. I generally start with the cream, and I just kind of pour it in, maybe quarter to a half cup if you wanted to measure it. If you do want to measure it, that's great. Just maybe don't put it all in at once. So as soon as I start seeing things kind of clump together, it's still really dry, and I am kind of stirring gently from the bottom. But you can see it's still pretty dry. So that's when I add the buttermilk. Definitely want to shake buttermilk before you use it. And I'm just gonna do maybe a 1/4 cup of buttermilk. But I know that if it's still dry after I stir it a tiny bit more, I will add more buttermilk. So you want it a little dry, but not super dry. You definitely want it to start coming together, and you don't want a lot of dry stuff on the bottom, but a little bit. I know this is very vague, but hopefully seeing it helps. And then you don't want to stir it too much, because the whole idea of this and the whole reason why we're adding first the dry ingredients and then the fat and then the liquid is that we don't want to activate the gluten. We want a really light product. We don't want it to be bready or spongy. So I'm going to use parchment paper to avoid making a huge mess on Laura's beautiful counter. And if you kind of scrunch up your parchment paper a little bit, it lies flat better. Let's see. So you can see it's definitely not one big mass yet. And this is where you want to pull out that extra flour. So I just like to, I sprinkle a little on top and then a little on my hands. And then I just kind of press it into a square. I don't make triangle scones, but you could if you wanted. In that case, I would press it into a circle instead of a square. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You want it to be maybe an inch and a half tall. Maybe a little bit more flour. I kind of like to dip the bottom in flour a little bit before I put it on the pan so it doesn't stick. And then I generally just cut it into 9. And the nice thing about just cutting it instead of using like a round cookie cutter, for example, is none of it is wasted and none of it has to be re-rolled. So it just, that's going to give you the best texture. And then they never all come out the same size. So what I do is I put the larger ones on the outside of the pan and the smallest ones on the inside. And you can, if stuff falls off, just kind of press it back together. If you've never used parchment paper, it is a game changer when you're cooking, when you're baking. I use it for every time I use a sheet pan, pretty much. I use parchment. Even just like, I don't know, heating up pizza. And it makes everything a lot easier to clean later. And it's just available in the store, like with the foil. We will have a recipe on the website, so if you want exact measurements, they'll be there. So that's it. 9 scones, I'm going to put them in the oven at 375. I usually set the timer for 20 minutes and then I take a look at them. I turn the pan around and then it usually, everybody's oven is different, but it usually takes another 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the kind of fruit and how much liquid ended up in the scones. But we'll look at them a little bit later and I'll show you kind of what to look for when they're done. So see you in a little bit. Hey everybody, I'm back. The scones are out of the oven. As you can see, they're a nice golden brown color. And what you're looking for is you want them to be brown. And when you kind of push on them a little bit, they definitely, you can feel there's a top crust and they'll give a little bit, but then they'll spring back up. If they're not springing back up or they're just really soft still, they probably need a little bit longer. I would put them in for maybe 5 more minutes, but these look perfect. This is how you want it to look. I'm gonna just let these cool for maybe 5 minutes and then we are gonna eat them. And there's so much fruit in here. I often just eat them plain, just how they are, but also jam. If you like jam, these are great with jam. So give it a try, and if you do try it, let us know. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, like and subscribe our YouTube channel for more videos. Happy spring!